Republican Rick Lazio. He is currently serving his second term as Chautauqua County Executive. Greg Edwards, thanks very much for joining me.
Liz, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
We're very pleased to have you. We haven't actually seen you since the announcement just right before the convention with Rick Lazio. You were actually here with us virtually from New York City.
It was from New York City.
So what have you been up to? Because we haven't seen you terribly much, and I know that you've been on the fair circuit.
That's correct.
But what have you been doing with yourself?
Well, it has been very exciting for me over the last 11 plus weeks. It's been over 11,000 miles of travel around New York State. I've been to 30 or more fairs.
That's a lot of miles.
It is a lot of miles, but you know, being out there all throughout New York State, spending the time right out there with the people that make a difference every day, getting up, going to work, having opinions about where we need to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, right out there in the environment where they are, I think is where people need to be. That's where I've been.
So you have been balancing your job as county executive and also your job as the lieutenant governor candidate. How are you working with that?
Well, I was talking to my son, who's a teenager, about burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And he smiled as I was telling him that he needed to get more sleep and focus more on...
Not a very good role model in that particular aspect.
I have to confess that I haven't been recently. But I've been working hard as county executive, and I've been spending the majority of most weeks there. I've also been spending a portion of the week and all weekend out on the campaign trail, meeting with people, talking about things of importance to them, and really covering the state to make sure that our message, the message of Rick Lazio and Greg Edwards about the fact that we do have a future in New York State, that it takes principled leadership. It takes leadership that has a proven record of cutting taxes, improving services, and really providing people with a future. Rick, as a congressman in Washington, me as a county executive in Chautauqua County. And the more I'm out there talking to people, the more I realize that's precisely what they want and what they're looking for.
Well, one thing you're actually not doing is raising money. I mean, you have about $42,000, and it all came from 3 donors from downstate. They're hedge fund connected folks from Rick Lazio, and you've spent about $700. So you're not doing much in terms of the fundraising aspect.
Well, you know, I think the important part was the second part you just described, because I believe you have to be out there. I have the assistance of a friend of mine who has offered me a vehicle that's properly reported and recorded through the campaign. And other than that, and getting out there and meeting with the folks where they live, that's the important part.
Let's talk about, I mean, there's a primary. It's right around the corner. It's on Tuesday. What do you see? Because there is a feeling among some Republicans that Carl Paladino, who is just dumping a lot of money, more than $1 million of his own money, which is really paling in comparison to, or your spending on the other side pales in comparison to what he's dropping in. There's a feeling that he has the momentum and that he really could take this. What's your feeling on that? Well,
I understand the question, but it's really a failed premise because he hasn't been dumping in more money than Rick Lazio and myself and our work and our efforts. And there really isn't that momentum out there because I'll tell you, as I just described, I've been in over 40 different counties, traveling over 11,000 miles, out there with the people, from 250,000 people at Harbor Fests to the cafes or the coffee shops with 2 or 3 people sitting around a coffee table. What they want is a principled leader who understands what needs to be done, that's willing to take issues on head-on, without drama, you know, without chicken suits, you know, without those sorts of things. They're really willing to roll up their sleeves, address the issues, and create a future that we need. So I would have to disagree on both counts, and that's from being out there in the environment.
Okay, but do you bring up an interesting point, because you bring up the chicken suit, and that has to do with the debate. So a reader of the blog and a viewer dropped this off today. This is a mailer. This came from Mr. Paladino. It was dropped today. It basically says, if Rick Lazio won't debate Carl Paladino, how can he debate Andrew Cuomo? It's a pretty straightforward situation. Did you agree with his decision not to debate Carl Paladino?
I think it's important for people to realize that Rick Lazio and I have been out there where it matters, with the people, talking to them one-on-one, in large groups. I've been to the Tea Party meetings. I was in a meeting with over 250 people with the Tea Party. They want good principled leadership that has a proven track record to deliver. So we've been out there doing that. I think the importance now is we have 3 days until a primary. And the more people start to pay attention to the facts, the more they start looking at really who are the people who are running for this election process and this primary, the more momentum comes our way, the more people realize that Rick Lazio has the proven history of delivering for the people of New York State. I do the same thing in Chautauqua County. The The more they focus on that, the more and more support's being generated.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate, why not have put Rick Blasio up against Carl Palladino so he could have demonstrated some of what you are saying? I mean, if in fact he has a record that he believes in that is as strong as you say it is, why not demonstrate that to viewers statewide, to New Yorkers, to voters, and go toe-to-toe and expose the record of one candidate versus the record of another?
Well, the reality is Rick Blasio has been out there. He's been debating people on CNN. He's been debating people on Face the Nation. He's been debating people in the editorial boards of important and influential papers across the state. And you've seen the result. You've seen more and more people recognizing that Rick has the character, the integrity, and the willingness to take on the tough issues without all the distraction, without the drama, without the chicken suits, without the hecklers. And that's what people really want to see. And it's without the drama, because we've had enough drama in Albany.
Has not been calm.
Haven't we?
I know. You guys think that bland is a virtue, and I think there are probably people who agree with you.
It really is.
However,
rolling up your sleeves, going to work every day, delivering for the people that trusted you with their vote, and delivering for them and then running on your record. That's what the people of New York really need.
I just want to ask you real quickly to respond to something. We talked briefly about 9/11 and the anniversary.
Sure.
And there's an ad that the Conservatives were running. I just want you to take a look at it.
Sure.
New Yorkers have been through enough. Now a terrorist-sympathizing imam wants to build a $100 million mosque near Ground Zero. Where's this money coming from? Who's really behind it? Incredibly, Andrew Cuomo defends it, even though this imam said America was an accessory to 9/11. Andrew Cuomo is very
so you've seen this, I'm sure.
Yes, I have.
First, do you agree with the use of that footage? Because there were people who felt very uncomfortable with it, particularly given the sensitive nature of that Ground Zero footage.
Well, you know, the Conservative Party are principled and strong and focused. I think what you have to look at is what was the message. The message is that Andrew Cuomo was wrong, unwilling to address the issue, unwilling to get involved in a very important issue that affects New Yorkers. Now, there's a backdrop that people have focused on, and I understand that people have concerns about that. I'm sensitive to that. And I've certainly looked at and watched some of the reaction of that, and that certainly wasn't what was intended, I'm sure. I mean, I wasn't involved in the production of it. It was a Conservative Party production.
Was it appropriate, though? Was it appropriate to use those images?
I think it's subject to someone's interpretation, and everybody looks at that a little differently. I think it's an important issue. I think that 9/11 is a tremendously important issue, and one that we have to, as we will tomorrow, spend some time focusing on. But the issue is not the backdrop, it's the front of that, and that is that Rick Blasio, principled, man of integrity, took on that issue without regard to the fact that some people were not going to like it, but took on that issue and said that Andrew Cuomo ought to be doing his job as Attorney General, much less focusing on trying to become governor. And he didn't, he wasn't, he hasn't, and he can't. But the reality is, I understand the concerns that have been expressed, and I really can't address those because those are individual concerns. I'm sure if people had to do it all over again and it was reviewed, maybe a different approach would be taken, but that really wasn't the focus. The focus was we need a governor who's willing to stand up for the people of New York State, to stand up and want to make sure that things that happen within New York State, particularly at Ground Zero, are things that are positive, reflect appropriately on that very special site, and really move us forward. And unfortunately, that hasn't been how that mosque has been presented. I don't think it does what it intends to do by the firestorm that's been created by it.
You are a man on message, Greg Edwards, I have to tell you. And it is well delivered, and we hear you. I unfortunately have to cut you off. But I want to thank you very much for joining us.